To witness. So thank you again, Silvana. I'm going to turn things over just briefly to Cassandra to share a few words. Cassandra is one of our primary therapists. She started out as a student with us. One of the things when we do a lot of the pro bono and low cost work that we do, it's only possible because we intensively train students in our model. And sometimes people hear that they're seeing a student, or community professionals hear it's a student and they feel deterred by it. I'll tell you, I've trained thousands of very experienced professionals. I love working with the students that come through our center because they're learning our model, they're fully immersed in it, and they know it, right? And they know it so well that quite often when they complete their placement, they're offered contract employment with us. Now, because we don't have funding, most of them will do a little bit with us and then get a full-time job somewhere else. And it's always a little bit of a heartache when I have someone calling for a reference and I'm like, well, you know, they're good because I've spent the past year mentoring them. They're great, but you're stealing them. But at the same time, they're going out into the community where I also know they're healing. So Cassandra is someone who is a student partially through the pandemic, but she also is a paid staff with us and does a lot of the nonprofit work as well. So I would like to turn things over to her to say a few words.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm Cassandra, and I'm going to offer that kind of student and staff perspective. So I'm currently a therapist right now. Been since a paid therapist since about June, but I've been with ATTCH since January. So my whole placement was during the pandemic, which is quite an interesting perspective. And so, yeah, you know, one of the reasons why I was initially attracted to ATTCH as a student and why I continue to stay here very much is the nonprofit and is the work that we were able to do at ATTCH Niagara with clients who would otherwise not be able to afford therapy. That was a huge push for me to join ATTCH. And I was very inspired from my background. So my background is in community mental health and crisis mental health. And, you know, over those years, you know, I would encounter lots of clients who were, you know, not doing well, who were experiencing active wishes to die, active suicide attempts, panic attacks, eating disorders, addiction, all of those things that are so trauma-based, as kind of Laurie talked about, and very commonly they'd have some history of trauma, but we wouldn't be able to touch it. So we would be working through interventions that are effective in the short term, but not, we still see them coming back and continuing to use the ER, continuing to access crisis lines because we're not getting at the root. So what's really beautiful about ATTCH and our model is that pretty quickly we're able to reduce that high risk behavior in a way that I'd never known. I'd worked 5 years in the community mental health field, and there were still clients that, you know, are still using services that I had encountered on my first day 5 years ago. So this is just beautiful because we can see that risk shift quickly. And that's not to say that the treatment and the healing journey is over quickly, but the risk comes down quickly, and we work with all of those pieces of the puzzle. So just to give you an idea of some of my own clients and the change that I've seen, you know, I have clients who've started with addiction. Now they just don't have any reason to drink. You know, no reason to drink, no reason to use. And, you know, their life is totally different as a result. Similarly with suicide and kind of all of the other high risk behaviors. So huge changes that I never thought were really truly possible. And that improvement is just the reminder of why we keep doing what we're doing. But they wouldn't be possible without the support of the funders. And I think that's a huge take home when we're working with people with trauma, when we're working with the most complex of complex cases. That's pretty debilitating, right? It's pretty debilitating um, to be in active addiction, to be um, experiencing suicide ideation to the point that you are in the hospital daily. So those clients are typically on ODSP. They might be homeless. They might be on Ontario Works. And so it's the clients that really are the most work, that are, that need the help the most and that are the most marginalized, that can best benefit from our services and would not be able to benefit, would not be able to be a part of other services. And also we fill a specialized niche within the community, because there are other counseling services, but we are able to kind of do a broad perspective of trauma and really get at the childhood roots, whereas other agencies might be specific to kind of one population. And so we're very inclusive that way. And so we're really just allowing people to kind of take back control of their lives without being burdened by by unprocessed traumas, and to speak to the pandemic changes. Since I did my placement within the pandemic completely, clients have truly been affected, very affected by the pandemic. There's been reductions in services or things going online, and we're able to offer in person. So really able to work with those anxieties once we've kind of processed the traumas, or if the traumas are related to if past traumas are getting activated by current kind of processes, we're able to work through that and have clients kind of gain control over their own lives again. So I've noticed that clients are in therapy for a little bit longer with COVID. And yes, there's no shortage of referrals. So we're happy to continue doing the work.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cassandra, and thank you for the work that you do as well. One of the things that I do want to highlight about the Trillium grant that we received in particular was infrastructure. So we have continued through the entire pandemic. Unlike some organizations, we kept going. We didn't have a pause, we didn't have a break, there was no gap, there was no lag. And many of our clients, because we work with people who are quite marginalized, if they don't have internet, if they don't have technology, if they don't have a safe private space to meet, they can't do online. And our model is not suited to phone-based, because we're working with such complex work. We need to be able to visibly track the affect of the clients to make sure they're not dissociating, or that no harm is coming, or they're not getting flooded. That's part of our pacing. So one of the things that we are able to do is install opening windows. We have a beautiful building. It has no opening windows. We were able to get sneeze guards. So, practical things that many organizations may have had the ability to get as a small nonprofit. We just didn't have the funds to be able to do that. So in addition to funding a part-time, 7 hours a week position, which is also huge for us, that's a really big deal. It also lended to some of the more practical needs for in-person, but also giving us support to set up online support and ensuring that the online services that we offer, which is still at a high rate, are done in a safe and effective way. So